Let's start with a simple video. These little dots represent transit vehicles in Vancouver, Canada. You saw just a few dots at the beginning of the image, and now gradually there are more and more as the day progresses and more vehicles pull out onto the street. This pattern of vehicles moving in space is the essence of what a transit network is. You may notice that as there are more and more vehicles, you start to see the lines that they form. The lines are made of lots of vehicles, but remember, it's the vehicles, not the line, that is really there and is really providing the service. So how do we design this pattern of vehicles operating in space so that lots of people can use them to get where they're going in a way that will be appealing to them? That's the subject of this course. My expertise in this comes from having about 30 years of experience as a network design consultant. I'm someone who's hired by cities or transit agencies to help rethink the layout of a public transit network, often erasing all of the lines and putting them down from scratch to reflect the needs of the network today. I'm also the author of a book called Human Transit, which attempts to explain a lot of these ideas at greater length to a reasonably thoughtful reader, with the goal of helping you be a more effective advocate for whatever kind of community you want. And I also continue to write on the blog humantransit.org, and we'll come back to that at the end of the course. I've worked on many network plans where I have generally been the lead designer, the person who convenes a group of people who actually gather around the map and figure out the plan. I've done this in cities all over the world. So let's get started. Public transport operating cost is dominated by the cost of labor. This is true universally in relatively wealthy countries like the US, Canada, Europe, or the wealthy countries of East Asia. It's a little less true in less wealthy countries where wages are much lower. But if you're working in a relatively wealthy country, you have to remember that labor is the dominant cost. So public transit just serves more people per employee than anything you can do with a taxi or Uber or Lyft model where people are being served individually. And this is what makes transit's lower fares possible. Transit helps to reduce emissions by reducing the overall quantity of travel, by enabling people to travel in fewer vehicles. As you hear discussions about whether transit vehicles themselves should be zero emission, which is a great thing, remember that any transit vehicle that's carrying multiple people is doing more for emissions than those same people driving in separate cars. So that is, remember, both a benefit from the perspective of climate change, but it's also a benefit for local air pollution, which is also a critical public health issue. Finally, there's the efficient use of space. Many people have seen an image like this one that compares how much space in a street 60 people take if they are all in a car, if they're all on a bus, or if they're all on bicycles. The thing to remember about this is that this is a geometric fact, and technology never changes geometry. Here's how much space these people take if they're all on a bus. Here's how much space they take if they're all in private cars. Now, if they all use Uber and Lyft, it looks more like this. Well, it's a little different. Uber and Lyft, compared to private cars, will reduce the need for parking, but they increase the amount of traffic. When you drive your car to a destination and park it, you're consuming a parking space. When you take Uber or Lyft to your destination, you're not using a parking space, but that car will then drive onward from where it dropped you off to where it picks up the next person. And that is new vehicle miles traveled that the Uber Lyft model adds to the transportation system. Driverless cars, of course, it will look like this. Driverlessness has really very little to do with the actual efficiency of using space in vehicles. And in fact, there's reason to believe that driverless cars will make the whole problem of traffic congestion worse because it's a well-known principle of biology that's true of almost any organism, that if you make an attractive thing easier, if you reduce the level of difficulty of it, people will do it more. The only reason we have as little traffic as we have now is that driving is a hassle, and many people don't want to do it and choose not to do it, and choose not to make trips that they might otherwise make if it were completely effortless, if all you had to do was get in the car and tell a computer to go where you want to go. There is the potential for driverless cars to make traffic quite a bit worse. Eventually, we may have more driverless public transit. If we did, it would be a critical tool in helping to use space efficiently. That's probably a ways off yet. We do have driverless rail transit. Vancouver, Canada opened the first driverless rail system. It's been running since 1986, and there are now many others around the world. The driverless vehicle in mixed traffic open to passengers is something that I think is going to take a while yet to develop. The difficult trade-off is between expectations that we serve demand by running the kinds of service that will carry lots of people, and that's the sort of service that's being provided when we offer a big bus or a train that's ready to carry lots of people per driver and operate in it in a pattern where lots of people will find it useful. In the next chapter, I want to look more closely at this particular question by looking at the particular issue of flexible transit, often called on-demand transit or microtransit, how it is different from fixed transit, and why it's almost always less efficient.